So you've crocheted all your parts and now it is time to sew up Igor the Halloween Crab. It has quite a few different parts, quite a few ends, so I would take it step by step and put it together. First, go away and take the bottom of all of your legs and stuff those and then sew in your ends. So what we're going to do, take a little bit of stuffing, use the heel end of your hook to push that in. Then using your wool needle, gather the tip to a point. And secure that in and repeat that for all 8 of the bottom of the legs. Once you've got your 8 bottom of your legs stuffed, next do the same thing on the claws. So stuff and sew in all of your ends. So once you've stuffed and sewn in all the ends on the bottom of your legs, do exactly the same for the 2 pincers at the front. Then, to assemble these legs, what you're going to do is take your top part of your leg, gather your last round of stitches, so in exactly the same way as we would do finishing a part normally. I've not added stuffing to that, so that remains flat. And then what I'm going to do is sew it onto the end of the leg. So not onto the tip that you closed, but actually onto your starting ring. So sew the top of that with that thread that you've used to gather onto the bottom of the leg like that. A few stitches. And then fasten that off around a couple of stitches as well. So once you've got all your other pieces prepped and stuffed and your ends in, it's time to actually crochet the main body of the crab together. And the easiest way to do this is to actually tuck in the ends on both the pieces. So the black piece on mine, the larger piece, is the top and the amethyst one is the bottom. So tuck in both sets of ends. And I find it easiest to do this with a new piece of yarn rather than the one that is attached, because you'd need quite a long one to go all the way around the edge. So line up your 2 pieces like that and make sure they're both right side out. So you want your right side of your crochet on both sides. And then what you're going to do is crochet around the edge going through both pieces. Now I'm going to stuff mine afterwards rather than have that stuffing in there as I'm doing it. I'm going to stuff right the way around and leave a gap, and then I'll put my stuffing in afterwards. So put your hook in from the black side through the amethyst side like that. Then using your black yarn, all you need to do is double crochet through both sides of the fabric like that. So you're going through the whole stitch on the black side, the whole stitch on the amethyst side, and double crocheting right the way around that edge. So whiz round, leave a hole, you can add your stuffing and then finish it off, and then it's time for the final assembly. So once you've gone right round, put your stuffing inside and then just finish off those last few stitches that will close that shell off. Tucking those ends in neatly so you don't have to sew that. It'll only be the one last thread left that you'll have to sew up. And then it's time to add the legs. So with your arm, the balls that sit behind the pincers to form the arms, best thing to do is to gather those stitches together on one of them, and then we're going to sew in and through the next one. So what I'm going to do is actually I'm going to sew through that ball first like that, and then on to the next one to attach that on. I'm going to do a few stitches between the 2, and then I'm going to sew back through, and I can actually use that to attach it onto the body of the crab then, that same end. So one end, you won't have to rejoin, do a few stitches, and I'll use that to attach that on. Then with this side, what I can do is actually use that to attach that onto the claw. So same thing on this side, gather the stitches first once you've stuffed them. And then taking your claw, sew it through that beginning circle. So do the same thing on the other side. So to make the legs, what's quite unique about this design is the legs have lots of movement in. What we're going to do is we're going to double crochet each set of 4 together on either side, and that'll make it much easier for you then to be able to sew those into position. So to do that, all you need is the yarn colour that you've used for the tops of the legs. So in this case, it is amethyst, and slip stitch that yarn into position on one side of the first leg like that. And then what we're going to do is double crochet either side of the starting ring on each one. So put your hook in and do 1 double crochet, and then the other side of the starting ring and 1 double crochet. Then pick up the next one, line it up with your first one, and repeat that. So one side of the 6 in a ring and a DC, and then to the other side. So that's 2, then to the next one. And then the final one, and make sure they're just all pointing in the same direction. So do you see how I've got them pointing downwards? All the tips that are yellow in this case. Like that. Break your yarn, and then we can sew those into position onto our base, which is the same colour as the tops of the legs, to make that nice and easy, so it will be almost invisible when you're doing so. So then when it comes to sewing your legs into position, turn your crab over like that. So you've got the upside down, and imagine it split in half. That's where the legs are going to start. So if the bottom of your base is like that as an oval, imagine it divided in 2, and your legs will start from there. So your legs need to point upwards like this. So you've got all your points on the end pointing in that direction, and then just sew your legs onto that line there. So I'm just going to pick that up to make that a bit easier for myself. So hold your legs into position and sew between that round there and the double crochets that you did to attach them together, and that should make it lovely and easy, but retain the movement between all the legs so they're not stiff. There we go. Once I've sewn one end, you could always run across the other end and sew it on the other side as well. There we go. So repeat that on the other side. Then it comes to sewing on our claws. And so our claws are going to sit just in front of that, but on the black. So again, think about that dividing in half. Our claw is going to go in here on the front, but on the top into the black. So sew that bit into position. And then it's time to add the final details of the eyes and the markings, as well as that cute little smile. Then once you've got the pincers in place too, the final finishing touches are adding the markings on the top of the shell. So you make these separately, and then all you need to do is sew them into position by just placing them where you want them to be, which is just above that claw, and then back stitching all the way around to keep those yellow stitches within the yellow patch. So once you've got the patches and the smile in position, you're actually going to crochet these directly on. Now, when I've been using the black yarn, as I have done here, I've not bothered to put to sew the little eyes onto the end of those, but obviously you can invert these colours whichever way you want to as you finish your crab. So say you decide to use the magenta as the top shell in place of the black, what you'll probably want to do is add 2 little eye strands onto the end of these rather than onto those circular markings on the face. And that is Igor complete.